During the quest Wasteland Survival Guide, the player travels across the wasteland and researches various subjects to help Moira Brown finish her book. It's one of the longest and most iconic side quests in Fallout 3, but it was once planned to be even grander. There's a cut centaur named Clancy. He's identical to other centaurs, except for using the prefix MS-03, revealing he was somehow involved in the Wasteland Survival Guide quest.
Well, a little before you first arrived, one of my experiments had a little accident. I mean, how could I have predicted the centaur would think my assistant smelled tasty?
Moira mentions that her previous assistant was killed by a centaur, and the official guide expands on this even further. After a recent accident with a domesticated centaur, Moira was inspired to write a book to help others survive in the wasteland and avoid similar dangers. It seems very likely that Clancy is the domesticated centaur that's being referenced. Developer notes and quest logs show that Moira's original name was Leia. She has 11 unused dialogue topics about centaur training and centaur food, but all of them are unfortunately missing their lines. There is no other remaining evidence of how Clancy would have been used, but perhaps a quest objective once revolved around centaurs, which seems like a good possibility considering you already researched Mireworks and mole rats. There's a cut weapon called Mirework Bait Grenade that was once given to the player for the Anchorage Memorial section of the quest. This is the objective where you place an observer inside some Mirework spawning pods. It uses the frag grenade model, but deals no damage and has no effect. The code for its effect is mentioned, but this was either deleted or never implemented, and it's unknown how it would have functioned. The optional objective for this stage is to avoid killing any Mireworks, so it likely distracted nearby Mireworks and gave the player a chance to sneak past them. A note reveals the player would have received more grenades if they completed the bonus objective, but in the final game, you're given the item Shady had instead. There are several cut image notes that would have been given to the player as they started different quest objectives. These are images of Minefield Playground, some Mirework eggs, and Arlington Library. There's a cut book called Motivational Secrets of the Stars, and reading it would have increased the player's speech skill. It also uses the prefix MS-03, suggesting that it was likely once a quest reward, but in the final game, the only speech books are Lying Congressional Style and Paradise Lost. There's cut headgear called Surgical Mask that was once a part of this quest as well. It's missing both its icon and its model, but it would have given the player +5 to their medical skill and +5 to their poison/radiation resistance. There's another inaccessible item named Surgical Mask, and that's actually the one worn by your dad during the start of the game.
So cynical. No, I can take care of all that with the few traders I know. What makes you think I'd force you to handle something so dangerous? Now you should just lie back and bask in the praise for helping with the book.
After completing the last objective, the player can mention that Moira probably wants them to print and distribute the guide, but she'll reply that she doesn't need help. That dialogue topic is named Printing Request B. The previous topic, Printing Request A, was cut and its line was deleted. This line likely once started the cut final stage of the quest. An unused log entry reveals that Moira would have given the player the cut item Survival Guide manuscript, and they'd take it to Hubris Comics to print out the guides. This objective would have occurred at the location Hubris Comics Printing, which is protected by one of the strongest human enemies in the base game, Mad Johnny West. There's a terminal for the printing press here, but turning it on causes it to malfunction and start to smoke, as there's a skeleton jammed inside of it. The smoke has a cool effect of making Mad Johnny West less accurate, and also causes his turrets to stop firing, but the press's original purpose was to print the survival guides. There's an unused entry for the printing press terminal, which I suspect is a remnant of this cut quest stage. You had the option to turn the printing press on, but choosing that would have resulted in the warning, action failed, no power supply, and it seems you needed to somehow restore power to it. After restoring power, the printing press and treads were meant to have a cool animation as the guides were printed out. The player then needed to bring the books to Moira to complete the quest. It's possible this was cut for pacing, as it's already a notably long quest line, but perhaps there simply wasn't time to complete it. Regardless of why it was cut, Hubris Comics ended up as a somewhat forgettable secondary location. The Wasteland Survival Guide would later appear in future games, acting as both a reference to this quest and the game that followed as a spiritual successor to Wasteland. These changes, particularly giving Hubris Comics an actual quest, would have made Fallout 3 into an even better game. Ultimately though, all of this was left on the cutting room floor.